Hello and welcome to Conversation Day 2020 right here at the Writer Center in Port of Spain. I am Soyini Grey. I'm a journalist working right here in Trinidad and Tobago, and we're going to have a very fun, I expect, conversation about civil liberties, specifically which civil liberties are you uncomfortable giving up? So you can't have a conversation by yourself. So I'm being joined at the moment by two persons. I have Janine Mendes-Franco. She's a writer and producer. She's also the Caribbean regional editor at Global Voices, which I really like, which is an international nonprofit that reports on news stories with particular emphasis on voices not ordinarily heard in mainstream media. And I have Kyle Hernandez. Kyle is a writer and a performer, self-described as creatively maladjusted.
Yeah, that's true.
How?
Why not?
And we're going to be joined any minute now by Jewel Massiah, but I'll introduce her when she comes. So, guys, civil liberties that you're uncomfortable giving up, or should we define what civil liberties are? Any takers?
Freedoms guaranteed under the Constitution.
Yeah.
Here's Jewel.
Hi, Jewel.
Hi.
Okay, so Jewel is a 16-year-old passion-driven young entrepreneur striving towards her purpose. Hi, Jewel. Welcome. So you probably missed the introduction. I'm Soyini Grey. I'm a broadcast journalist. Janine Mendes-Franco is a writer and producer for Caribbean Voices, and Kyle is a writer and performer. Right? So we're now getting started. You slipped in at the perfect time. We were just talking about what civil liberties are because we need to figure out which ones we're uncomfortable giving up. Right? So yes, we were saying rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Yeah, so like freedom of the press, religion, expression, all those good things. So Kyle, what way are you uncomfortable giving up?
I don't want to say I'm uncomfortable giving up any, because I feel like slowly, and without us even noticing, we do give them up to like benefit from other things. So even if you think about our relationship with social media and how those companies and how they treat our privacy. I mean, civil liberty is a privacy, and
right,
I find myself giving that up a lot. You know what I mean? One time I was searching last week, I think, for cars, and then now my entire everything online, every single platform, cars. That's an infringement on my privacy, but I kind of like it.
So you started with a civil liberty that you don't mind giving up.
Yeah.
which is your privacy, but which one do you mind giving up? So your privacy. Well, where's privacy?
The one I'm a writer and performer, so I have to say freedom of speech. That is probably the only thing that I'm really uncomfortable giving up.
Why though?
Yeah. Well,
separate from being a writer and a performer, but why though?
I look at in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm not really considered a minority. I'm sort of in the majority. And I look at my friends and colleagues who are in disenfranchised communities, and I see every single day how they're very stifled, and I feel like I can't breathe for them. And I would just really hate if that would happen to me. So it's something that I often think about. If I wanted to feel something or say something, not being allowed to do that, I don't know if I'd be able to live, honestly. And I know that's an exaggeration. I don't know if anybody else could add to that, but.
Jewel?
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
In terms of the question, which ones I'm uncomfortable giving up, personally, I don't know if this is because I'm a young person or whatever. My response was all. I am uncomfortable with giving up all. Unless, it depends on what is at stake. If it is other people's lives, like, we have Corona and COVID-19, some of our liberties were taken away, but it was for safety. So depending on what's at stake, then okay, I'll have to use my wisdom and alright, fine, you can't have this right now. But in general, if nothing is at stake, I'd like to have everything that I am owed as being a human being.
But you think we have everything though? because like Kyle was saying, to get to use Facebook, you have to give up certain things, and people don't read those agreements. So you're signing away rights that you didn't even know that you're signing away. You know, which is why when you do a search on Google, all of a sudden your Facebook ads cater to that search, because you've signed away massive bits actually of your privacy. So what you think, you know, you clearly have given away some. What's the worst? What's the worst you think for you?
The worst that I've given up?
No, that you could give up. That you wouldn't want to give up. My bad.
Yeah, freedom of speech is definitely the one that I am unwilling.
Because you reacted when he said it.
I am unwilling. Under no circumstances am I willing to be silenced. I don't see how people would benefit from that.
And it's funny because I think that's one of the biggest ones that we try to control. That governments try to control people's ability to talk. You have to get permission to go on a protest. You know, certain things that you say can get you in trouble, even in democratic Trinidad and Tobago. Janine?
No, well, I mean, I agree with Jewel. I mean, when I first read the question, I had to do a double take because I thought at first it said, which civil liberties are you comfortable giving up? I'm like, none. Then I reread it and it was, which civil liberties are you most uncomfortable giving up? I'm like, all. But yeah, I mean, I think if I had to say the most uncomfortable, it would probably be freedom of speech as well. Not just because of what I do, but I think that freedom of speech is kind of like a foundation stone for so many other freedoms and liberties. So freedom of speech impacts, well, you have to have freedom of thought and expression before you can have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech applies to, it affects freedom of assembly, rule of law, all sorts of things. So if you take away the right for people to self-advocate, then it's just a domino effect. So I think that's probably one of the most important ones, not to concede.
You think I'm not even going to try and pretend that I'm original. I'm like you, I have issues with not being able to say what I want when I want. But the truth is, I don't say what I want when I want. Because, you know, of my job, I have to be circumspect with how I comment on things online, because you either don't want to, you know, color the work that I do as a journalist, and maybe you don't want to get into trouble with your bosses, you know. So having said that, I say I'm most uncomfortable with freedom of speech, but clearly I'm quite comfortable with limiting my own freedoms or expressions. Or is that just common sense?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think you have to be wise about how you say things. I mean, because, you know, I mean, I think what matters is, for instance, when Jewel said, if you want to look at the COVID-19 context, certain freedoms, freedom of movement, for instance, was taken away. But it was how it was handled. So intention matters, and I think consent matters. So we weren't just slapped with a state of emergency, as was the case in certain Jamaican communities were under a state of emergency. They imposed curfews, I think, there and in Barbados. With us, it was a matter of you were relying on people's good sense, and things were explained, and information was forthcoming very regularly. And basically, it was, yes, sure, certain things were, you had certain legal parameters that would have been taken. But by and large, it was left to the citizenry to step up. And I think that had a buy-in.
The Prime Minister used the word moral suasion. He's like, a state of emergency can't make you stay home. And I was like, that's so progressive.
Absolutely.
It is. I think if you inspire good behavior, it goes so much more of a long way, right?
I was just stunned by it because I had a lot of people on my timeline saying he has to call a state of emergency, and I'm like, we just okay now? Emergency? It's like, we have like a major virus. Let's have a state of emergency. It have crime in this area. Let's have a state of emergency. I don't know, it rained for a week. Let's have a state of emergency. We just okay with the state of emergency now? I'm so confused.
No, and I think, go ahead.
I really dig the word consent in this regard. I'm seeing this not only as giving permission, but it's an agreement, a contract to go forward as a partner. I mean, I feel like the cornerstone of democracy or like a liberal government is, hey, we'll protect these rights and you have to give up some of these rights so we could protect these rights. But of course, the people, we're these major stakeholders, we're your employer, and so on and so forth. So it's definitely a matter of partnership and permission. And I feel, I mean, even if we're talking about this context of COVID, you know, a lot of us were shocked by how sort of forthcoming, as you said, the information was, and I actually just felt a sort of trust in the administration that I didn't feel before, because the information, okay, every day is a press conference, every other week, and I felt like I was receiving a lot of information and I was being consulted.
You didn't feel overwhelmed by the information though, by the amount?
I had to check myself. I had to like sort of check out for a good bit, but in the beginning I really needed that info. So I was glad I had it. Yeah.
So this was, well, within these weeks we saw Black Lives Matter protests, not just in Trinidad, well, in the US and then in Trinidad and Tobago. And one of the interesting turns recently is that their president is trying to limit their freedoms. You just blinked. Their freedoms, where that is concerned. Now, America prides itself as, what is it?
Land of the free.
Yeah.
Right. And now the president is saying, yeah, but this thing that you're saying about the police and the fact that you're all blocking the streets that I want to stroll on is a problem.
Yeah.
You know, what kind of messaging do you think those protests are saying about the United States and their freedoms that they boast about? You know, especially the president's reaction to them.
Everybody is looking at me.
Yeah.
Your face tells. Your face tells all these comments. It tells all your stories.
That's a very touchy subject for me because it just is, right? So I would say this situation has shown that the system is flawed, but the system has been flawed. What it shows is that this particular community of people are not okay with giving up that particular civil liberty. Just to breathe, just to be alive, we're not okay. So I would say the government, the system didn't change. Nothing was really taken away per se. It was always that.
It was constructed
broken.
that
It
way.
was always that broken.
Yeah.
But we just don't tolerate it anymore.
Yeah.
So it comes like the same way you asked us this question and we sitting down here and answering it. They answering it in the streets, in front of all these important places, in all these aggressive ways.
So you're okay with protesting as a form of expression?
Yes, I believe it's necessary.
I love that. I love that. No, I love that. I love that. Yes, I believe it's necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, the reality is that, for instance, okay, so I was discussing the topic I had a meeting with some GV colleagues last week. And I said, listen to this question, So we're kind of discussing it. And one of the points that we made was that a colleague of mine said this: if you want to sort of rank the importance of civil liberties, one of the things that you probably need to do is determine which of them cannot be transferred online. So for instance, that's something that GB is very interested in, right? I mean, we advocate for, an egalitarian web and all the rest of it, access and so on, freedom of voices. And so, for instance, freedom of religion, we were able to attend religious services via Zoom. We were able to go to class virtually, right? The freedom of assembly, not so much. You have digital activism, that's a thing. But the actual presence of physical bodies in a space that make a visual statement doesn't translate the same way. So, like last week's, even in Trinidad and Tobago, the Black Lives Matter protests in front of the US Embassy had a lot more resonance on social media than the discussions before because there were physical bodies in a space, right? But when you talk about rights being transferable online, then you also get into another discussion, which is access. So, right? So if for instance, education is online and I have a device and Wi-Fi, then I can access that civil right. But if I don't, then that's a whole other discussion, right? And so therefore, and this COVID-19 situation really laid bare the gaps, the inequities in society between those who can access the web and who can't, and how. And even if you can digitally access it, some people may not have parents at home to be able to ensure that they go to school online, so it gets into a really muddy discussion. So,
So I think, just jumping off of that, like the the actionable from that, what you just said, in terms of access, should be everyone's prerogative, whether it be private, or public sector, to make sure that every single body has access to those like particular rights, because otherwise it's just an uneven playing field. So, I mean, America is a real good case study for that. The land of the free and brave. It's really just a land of like ego and power, and only because now things are more pronounced, so you're seeing that going on, and you're seeing a large disparity between those who have and those who don't. And it's been a conversation, at least for the past 5 years, I'm hearing in Trinidad and Tobago, the dissolvement of the middle class and the gap being greater and greater. I think that gap comes with mistrust and comes with lack of information, and it's a boiling pot for, well...
I don't think it's just the United States, though. I think that COVID-19 has laid bare just global inequities.
Right.
I mean, that's just right across the board.
Yeah.
And certainly in capitalist societies.
Yeah.
I don't think it's unique to them at all.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it's just going back to the whole freedom of expression thing and the social inequity.
Yeah.
I think that's why talk radio is so popular within a certain age group. And you always hear people calling, and we like to pontificate in this country, because you don't have, or they don't feel empowered anywhere else. So yes, they're exercising their right to speak, but it's not really doing anything other than filling airwaves that you could hopefully, well, the owners of the radio stations can use to sell airtime. But what action is being done? And I wonder if maybe not just what civil liberties we are uncomfortable giving up. The next point is, are we, the ones that we have, are we using them properly? And I wonder about that for Trinidad and Tobago. I feel as though, like, I was happy to see the protests in solidarity, because a lot of people didn't understand why we should care, or if any of those issues affect us here in Trinidad and Tobago. But two, and those of us who have access to the internet, we talk a lot online. We have a lot of opinions, but do we translate it into real action offline? So I thought that was a little positive. I mean, of course, you could also argue that the protest is, one day, and you get to go out and party after COVID lockdown or protests. But are you going to look at how our police treats with people in poorer communities who don't feel, who are not empowered? What's going to happen after that? So I wonder if it's also a call for civil society to be a little more active.
I agree with that. If I could just share something really quick, the work we do at the Two Sisters Movement with young people. I remember we a couple of performers and I went into the school. We said, hey, these are the rights of a child. And one of the teachers after the performance were like, that's all well and good, but if you keep telling them they have rights, they have freedom, they'll just feel very entitled. And I didn't understand what she meant by that.
Oh my.
I didn't. And I was like, oh, okay, you shouldn't be teaching. But then when I listened, what she was trying to say was, we teach rights, but we never teach responsibility. And so the same thing you're saying, we have these liberties, which are freedoms, but what do we do with that? What does it mean to be a democratic and free society? And how do we spread that, and of course in a non-totalitarian way? How do we use or weaponize those Facebook comments or those comments on radio? I think it's definitely a call to action, because I see civil liberties as something to enjoy alone, even me in my work as an activist, but it's really something to uphold and a responsibility you have as well.
Well, what's interesting is that civil liberties are actually delineated differently.
Right.
So you have what you call negative civil liberties and positive, and they're rated differently. So negative civil liberties are like external forces, so things that can be done unto you. So freedom of speech, rule of law, whereas the positive ones are more, I guess they could be more comparable to Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right.
So it requires some autonomy. So freedom, the right to a job, the right to a roof over my head, etc., etc., right? And so the negative civil liberties are rated as more important than the positive ones. So, yeah, I mean, sort of riffing off your point, I think it's important to sort of figure out how they interact. And I mean, it's one big tapestry, and how one affects the other, and what we can do to make sure that we are being responsible, because it is a matter of responsibility. You know, it can't just be, I have the right to this, and therefore, and really the whole furor on social media over Black Lives Matter and the comments shows that sort of yin and yang, right? So you have freedom of speech, yes, but if your freedom of speech then becomes oppressive to somebody else, do you still have that right? Do you have that right in the same capacity? Right? So, so responsibility does factor in a big way. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think. So go ahead, I love your face.
Jewel wants to talk.
Yeah, that's right.
I just listen honestly.
But what do you think about that? Because I know you perform as well.
Yeah.
Right? What do you think, just the idea of freedom of speech, and how do we police ourselves around that to not hurt anyone else?
That is a touchy topic, especially when you want to talk about protests and stuff. Because yes, we have a responsibility, and I understand that. I stand on that side.
Yeah.
I also understand why people acting out based on emotion, why they want people to feel the kind of angry and heated that they're feeling, why they want to disturb the peace. It's because they're not being heard.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do it peacefully, responsibly, and they're not being heard. And people die every day, and they're not being heard. So what next?
Right.
Then they start going down stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I don't know how to stand there. Because I want to say, no, you shouldn't do that. That's not right. That's violent. But I feel the pain. Like if that was my brother or that was you, the line is a hard line to draw. I just feel like if everybody respected each other, if they could hear us, if I nicely came to you and said, this is hurting me, and you said, well, I'm going to stop, and then we walk away. That would be so nice. So we have a responsibility, so does the other party. And as long as both responsibilities are held, then nobody has to step out of line. But when one side not, some stepping out of line is kind of awkward.
So like a freedom of speech, but responsibility to listen as well.
Responsibility to listen.
And really to have those conversations. I mean, I think it's important to just keep the discussion going, and to really listen, not listen to respond, listen to understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that one. Because it was clear with all the heated discussions that were happening, because these few weeks seem to be very discussion driven. I guess because also this dramatic thing is happening in the US, and people are kind of in lockdown, so you're feeling trapped, so you have to put a lot more of your energies on this online space. People were talking at each other rather than to win the argument. Because there was a discussion that I saw on a friend's post about the Columbus statues, and should we pull them down? And one of the the easiest, laziest rebuttal is, well, you can't rewrite history. I mean, but we know who writes history too, so is the history correct?
You get into that,
Things, we honestly, unfortunately, even me, as woke and progressive as I think I am, we do things that make us happy. Like I could say that argument because maybe I'm just too lazy, or I don't view it or deem it as affecting me. I feel that's one of the reasons, like perspective is extremely important. That is what civil liberties guard against. Because I could say I have a freedom of speech and this is what I think, so I'm meant to say this. But that perspective could be mine. It could also be wrong. It could also be coming from a place of hurt. I think these inalienable rights we have protect against that. But of course, as you were saying, the powers that be are not doing a very good job of protecting them, which makes all of us angry, because you're telling us to give up this to protect this. But if you're not protecting this, why are we giving this up?
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you're also talking about responsibility,
Right.
then whenever you look at a civil liberty and consider it in a larger context, you really do have to ask yourself, okay, well, what role is my privilege playing here? You know, you really do need to put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, what this pandemic, I mean, it's so blatantly obvious to me, and it really stuns me that it isn't blatantly obvious to everybody else, is that we are all connected, right? I mean, we're one human race, and we're connected to nature, we're connected to each other. We need to be able to, just like any ecosystem, really appreciate our diversity and honor it, not sort of try to whitewash everything and say,
Absolutely.
okay, you know. And so, yeah, I think it's a matter of whatever civil liberty you take for granted. Say, well, why do I take this for granted? And does somebody else take that for granted? And if not, why not? And then in that instance, say, well, what can I do to help make it a little more egalitarian?
Absolutely.
But I think what we're saying is that some people, the one group of people saying, hey, we don't actually have all these rights
Yeah.
that you'll keep professing about.
Yeah.
So if, you know, perhaps, can we get
Possible. Yeah.
so, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, just like a smidge more.
bad,
And the dominant group is literally saying, why you calling me a racist though?
Absolutely, absolutely.
and that is where
But
the
you know, all they need to do
conversation
is go to the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and it's like everybody's equal. Does not matter what race, color,
yeah.
how much money. It does not matter.
You think it's
right?
But in theory, but it
Yeah,
does
yeah,
because
no, I totally get you.
Because as you said with privilege,
Totally get you.
privilege truly makes you blind. Like it makes you
No,
absolutely unable to see the reality presented before you because it's not yours.
Exactly. What I
know?
mean,
I
I've
think-
always.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Okay. What I've always tried to remember is there's a difference between truth and reality. Something can be extremely true to me. Something I've seen a ghost. I see a ghost. I swear, but the reality doesn't mean I saw the ghost. You know what I mean? And so I think a matter of privilege is a big matter of perspective. The things that disenfranchised communities say to non-disenfranchised communities, hey, we don't have this, you have this, and they're like, no, shut up, we don't have this, I don't have this. You know, even in my conversations, like with like the people who are very close to my life, you know, I grew up in a very, very like poverty-stricken area, and my girlfriend right now is extremely middle class, or quote-unquote middle class. And she's like, yeah, I didn't have any money too. I was like, yeah, but no, I didn't have food. She's like, yeah, I had 3 shoes. Yeah, I was like, no, I couldn't go to school. Like, what is not, and you know, and this is somebody I love, and this is somebody that loves me, and she can't see it. And there are things that, you know, she benefit from with her privilege, and unfortunately cannot see. Like even me as a man, you know, hyper-masculinity or toxic masculinity or the patriarchy benefits me in a particular way, but it also kind of harms me from seeing reality in a certain way as well.
Yeah. That's very true.
People don't see the reality because while the Black Lives Matter movement woke up again these past few weeks, I realized that a lot of the Trinidadians were angry. They were really, really angry. But then I sit back and I was like, just a couple of months ago, we couldn't have Venezuelans stay in our home for We beat them up. We didn't want to give them jobs. We treat them bad. We didn't pay them how much we were supposed to pay them because they didn't know. So I don't understand like how we could be so angry when it's happening to us and then do it to others. So as you were saying, it's definitely we don't see the reality. You need to look at yourself and see like, have I been using my privilege negatively before I go and tell somebody else you using your privilege? But what I do
you do need to. Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody on Facebook about that. They were talking about, I don't know, something to do with probably access and COVID-19.
Yeah.
And she asked, you know, do we need to start having discussion spaces about these things? And I said, yes, absolutely we do. It's a matter of balance. So I didn't say much else. And she said, you know, I don't mean to put the spotlight on you, but what do you mean by that, this balance? And I can't remember what exactly the topic was, but I basically went on to say, I think it's important for us to just keep reminding ourselves to think communally until it becomes second nature.
It's hard right now. Like it's real hard to do that, I think.
I don't know that it, well, I mean, I don't know that it is. I think that anybody that could look, and I did not look at the video because I couldn't, I would have been a complete mess.
Right.
That looked at that George Floyd video and did not see, I can't wrap my mind around it. It was just so horrific.
Yeah.
How can you not identify with that as another human being and not understand that his pain is your pain? Yeah.
But the officers there didn't. There were 4 officers.
Absolutely,
the
I
officer
agree.
on his neck and then 3. And people, you're hearing people in the video because unfortunately, well, I watched it.
Yeah.
And then they keep replaying it.
Yeah.
You know? And that first weekend was really, because I ended up watching it a lot more than I planned to, because it just holds you. But you hear people talking to the officer saying, he can't breathe. He's calling for his mother.
Yeah.
And the officer's just not registering. And he's not the first person we've seen die on camera saying, I can't breathe. You know, so...
When I did my poem for that particular situation, and I put...
The first one, Eric Garner or George Floyd?
No, I said...
George Floyd.
Yeah.
And I put the graphic images, like the things that come off the news, you know? My mother, she was like, great video, I love it, but you didn't have to put those stuff, you could have censored. I was like, no, but it's serving the purpose I need to serve. And she's like, no, but you could still get the message across without that. I don't think you understand. I was like, does it make you uncomfortable? She said, yes. It's like, right, then why would it do?
Right.
It needs to make you uncomfortable. It needs to hurt. It hurts, somebody dying.
Right. But if I can play devil's advocate here, we should have a devil's advocate for this discussion after all, so don't worry. But it is easy to admit murder is wrong. Like there are a lot of people, like who don't admit their privilege in other spaces, but everybody stands. This is extremely wrong. What happened is a horrific event, but ... Like there's a this is wrong, but the other things, the systemic stuff, the other things, and that is what sort of meant by. It's hard to really be like to use empathy in that way, because with that violence and that uncomfortability, I've seen people who like have really, really silly opinions, and we all could come together and say, this guy did not deserve to die. Like it is easy to admit that murder is wrong, but what about the other things that lead to this? So I mean, of course, we're giving this the honor and the respect as possible, but why can't you use this same horror and understand that this over here leads to this? Because I think this is where the gap is. I don't know if you all see a little graph. But it's here we need to be worried about as well, to protect here. Okay. Otherwise, we will be slapping plasters.
Give some examples of
this. Laws, redlining, even here classes on Trinidad and Tobago, the access to proper wages in different communities, like disenfranchised communities all across here, they don't have access to all the things that privileged people have access to.
And we started by discussing which civil liberties we're uncomfortable giving up.
Yeah.
It's been a fiery conversation. I'm here with Jewel Massiah, Kyle Hernandez, and Janine Mendes-Franco. Guys, thank you so much for this discussion. It started to get really, really fiery at the end. So, but before Adine gets up and takes my mic, thank you so much. You've been watching Conversation Day TT, the conversations which civil liberties are you uncomfortable giving up. Most of us are uncomfortable giving up the freedom to speak. To speak, as you can see, because we really don't want to stop speaking. But there's another conversation coming up, so stay tuned.